This week's episode of the And She Looked Up podcast is brought to you by Fine Lime Designs. If the name sounds familiar, that's because it's my design business and the work I do there helps make this podcast possible. If you love colorful and whimsical art prints, greeting cards, and journaling stickers, then head over to my Etsy shop for a delightful browse. Just search for Fine Lime, like the fruit, designs, all one word, on Etsy, or click the link in the show notes. And now, on with this week's episode. Welcome to the And She Looked Up podcast. Each week, we sit down with inspiring Canadian women who create for a living. We talk about their creative journeys and their best business tips, as well as the creative and business mindset issues all creative entrepreneurs struggle with. I'm your host, Melissa Hartfield, and after leaving a 20-year career in corporate retail, I've been happily self-employed for 12 years. I'm a graphic designer, an illustrator, and a multi-six-figure-a-year entrepreneur in the digital content space. This podcast is for the artists, the makers, and the creatives who want to find a way to make a living doing what they love. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the And She Looked Up podcast. As always, I'm your host, Melissa, and this week I am really excited to be welcoming singer-songwriter Sharon Marie White to the podcast. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I am excited to chat with you today. So, for those of you who may not be familiar with Sharon Marie, we are going to tell you a little bit about her off the top. So, she is a former Manitoba prairie girl who now resides in the beautiful Rocky Mountain foothills just outside of Calgary. Her music has been a lifelong passion for her for over 40 years. She is an accomplished singer-songwriter who loves the creative storytelling that music allows her to do. She writes in multiple genres, including country, blues, and folk, and she is so proud to say that her music is being played around the world. So, we're going to be talking to Sharon Marie about her creative journey today. We're also going to be talking about something that's a little bit different that we haven't really talked about on the podcast before, and that is the idea that it's never too late to follow your passion. And I know a lot of people tend to think like, oh, I'm stuck where I am now. This is where it's going to be for me and I'm going to stay there. But Sharon Marie is pretty passionate about the fact that she has followed her dreams. She loves to say that she is just getting started. So, Sharon Marie, before we dive into the interview, the first question I ask everybody who comes on the podcast is, did you feel like you were creative as a kid?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny because I think it was my sister. My sister's a little bit older, and they had bought me this treasure book. I don't know if you remember those, but it was a book that you could keep all your yearly school activities, whatever. Mm-hmm. And at the first page of every year, it would ask, "What do you want to be when you grow up?"
Oh. And
I think from grade 1 to grade 12, I had three things. It was a teacher, an artist, and a singer, and it never fluctuated.
So you knew.
Yeah, or an actress. Once in a while, I'd throw actress in there, But yeah, I was always creative, especially with the music. That kind of came first, and just, listening to records and having to learn every lyric to every song. And, I would look at the liner notes and see who wrote the song. I mean, just from a very early age, right? I would say I knew.
When did you have your first opportunity to start playing music? Is that something that has been in your life since you were a small child?
Well, I always loved music, but the first opportunity was I was 14 years old and I wanted to learn how to play the guitar because I used to play hockey, and we had all girls hockey, and I remember we had this party, and one of our fellow players, she grabbed her guitar and she started singing at this party. And I think I was probably 12 or 13 at the time. And I just thought, I knew I loved to sing. So I thought, I've got to learn how to do this. What she's doing, I have to do that. And lucky enough, at our school, our English teacher was also a musician, and he was offering guitar lessons. And that's how this whole thing started.
Oh wow! So that's really cool because sometimes you talk to musicians and they started playing the piano when they were 3 and things like that. But
Yeah,
so
no, it kind of it was a bit later for me.
yeah,
So maybe everything has always been a bit later for me, right? Now when I'm looking back. But it doesn't matter, right? It's just the passion. And if you have the passion, go for it.
yeah. When did you kind of get the performing bug? When did you know that was something you wanted to do, and when did you actually start getting out there? Because were you when you first started performing, were you performing your own songs, or like how did the whole progression happen?
Yeah, the whole progression was so this teacher had about 3 of us students, and then after about a year, he said, you guys, I think we should just form a little band, and we just did cover tunes. But that's how that started, and then we got a drummer, and then the band became a rock band. So that's how I started, and then we really progressed very quickly because all of us that were in the band, and even the teacher was in the band, which was kind of a little strange dichotomy, and I don't know if that would work these days. But he was kind of our mentor. We would go play dances, and but we were all very passionate about it, so we just kept getting better and better and better, to the point we could play folk festivals, or we could play whatever we were asked to do, and almost every weekend we were out performing. We were doing cover tunes,
Right.
and it was rock music. And back then there wasn't as many female singers. I mean, you
No.
had Pat Benatar, but I did a lot of male music, because like a Loverboy or Journey, because there wasn't so many girls stuff to do out there.
Yeah.
But it was a lot of fun. I mean, I have so many wonderful memories, and I mean, basically that was my summer job. I mean, we just played music and on the weekends, so I didn't really have to have a real summer job. That was it. But the experiences that came from that were just wonderful memories.
And so why didn't you pursue it? I'm using professionally in quotes here because you were working as a musician on the weekends, but it wasn't your main job, I'm assuming, at this point.
No, I think maybe if I had been in a bigger center, I mean, little towns in southwest Manitoba,
Right.
so I didn't pursue that. However, when you had a question about did I go to university or college or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I did. I worked for a year after I graduated, and then I wanted to pursue the School of Music. So I auditioned, and I passed the audition as far as my vocal abilities, but I did not have, even though I was a musician, I did not have the theory part.
Oh, right.
And of course, School of Music,
Yes.
you need that. But of course, I had played by ear most of my life,
Right.
which is a gift.
Yes.
But it's also, I hate to say a curse, but it's hard to be so focused with the theory of it. So what I did was I took a year of called general studies. So I was trying to upgrade my music, and then so I was in second year university, and I met my wonderful husband,
Oh, nice.
which was wonderful. But
Yes.
and it has turned out wonderful. However, I quit school. I
Right.
dropped out of university because, I mean, I was in love, and so that was my focus at the time. And then with that came, marriage and children and other jobs and other careers. So music has always been there, but it kind of was a backseat.
Right. Did you still, after you got married and you had your kids, did you still find time to perform? Maybe not in the same way that you did previously, but were you still finding a way to get out there, or was it more just
Yeah,
like,
like
yeah,
again, we played most weekends, and especially when I was in the rock band, it was hard because I was a new mom, and
right.
my husband was on the road because I didn't actually drive, so he was on the road with me all the time, like on the weekends, and hauling the equipment, and it was funny because he was the light guy, and then he was the sound guy. I mean, he's always been so
He's your roadie, yeah.
Oh, absolutely, and so involved with the music. So it was always a very a juggling act to have family life, but the music always, the music may have taken a backseat, but it still at the same time was forefront. I mean, it was
Right.
on weekends, and just very passionate about it. But yeah, just other careers and other responsibilities kind of interwove that, right?
And when did you start writing music? Because that's a very different thing. And you mentioned you didn't have the theory background, so I actually did 8 years of Royal Conservatory for piano.
Oh,
So
I'm so jealous because
no, the theory was what killed it for me. I just hated it.
okay, so there you go, right?
I just wanted to play. I just wanted to play the piano. I didn't want to do all the other stuff anyway. um, but yes, I am not a talented person when it comes to playing by ear, which is my whole family is, but I am not. So
Okay.
piano was always music for me. I love music. It runs through my veins, but I've never been one of those people who comes by it naturally. I would say I'm proficient, and that's like that's
Right.
where it ends. But I'm not somebody who can just. I can't jam. I can't improvise. I just don't have that skill
Right.
set. So, um, so it's interesting how yeah, the theory is it's so, in a way, it's so crucial to the songwriting part, and yet I know so many talented songwriters and music writers who have no theory background whatsoever. And so, yeah, how did that all come about for you?
Well, and I mean, when I think back, again, to just being a creative individual, I used to write poetry when I was quite
Mm-hmm.
young, and this was before I learned the guitar. So I think that was kind of a stepping stone. So I wrote poetry, and then once I learned the guitar, that's where the songwriting came in. Now, I didn't really write a whole lot when I was in a rock band, but this is where it switched.
Right.
In the 90s, it was the same chap that, that had got me started in music, and we were in the rock band together. And then in the 90s, when there was that huge country explosion, right?
Yeah.
And he phoned me up one day and he said, "Hey, I was thinking maybe we should start a country band." And I mean, I'd always loved country music, so that wasn't a hardship for me. I was like, absolutely, that would be fun. So, and there was so many wonderful, especially female artists in the 90s. So that's kind of how that started. And then I got more serious about my songwriting. And I also I put in for a songwriting workshop in Manitoba, in Winnipeg. And I sent in my cassette. There, I'm dating myself. For one of my songs that I had written. And lo and behold, they said, "Hey, it's good. Come on to the workshop." And so I got to meet Arnold Lanny, who was an amazing singer-songwriter, producer, Colleen Peterson, who was in quartet, and Graham Shaw. And so we split up into groups and we got to work on some songwriting. And that kind of, again, just gave me a little bump of confidence that, okay, maybe I should keep doing this.
Right.
And then as I would write songs, then I would bring them to the band practices. And the guys would put in their parts, the lead or the bass parts or harmonies, whatever. And then we would play it at dances. And I would interject them into our set lists. And I think the most fun for me was to see people get up and dance to my music. That they
Yeah.
didn't, we didn't necessarily announce that this was my song that I had written. We just interjected it into the set list, and people would get up and dance, whether it was a ballad or whether it was a two-step. And that was just such fun for me. I was like, this is really cool. Like maybe
Yeah.
I can do this.
So what was it that made you decide, like, okay, now is the time to take this seriously as a career? Because I think that's something that started fairly recently for you, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, and we had invested about, oh gosh, I say 10 years ago, it could have been more than that now, but in some home recording equipment. And so we have our own little studio, and we had been recording songs. My husband had been mixing them, and we'd just been having fun. And I was playing all the instruments, and I also had a couple of former musicians. I mean, that's the beauty of technology, right? I would just send them the files, and they would put the bass part of the lead
Yes.
on, and my husband would mix it. So I had this song. I had a few of them, but there was specifically one song called Shine, and we had recorded it. I had written it, and it was a lot of fun. Our son Joel played drums on it. My niece was out for a visit. She plays piano, so she played piano on it. And we had, so about 2 years ago, a brand new country station start up in our little town here. And I really don't know what made me think of it, but I just thought, you know what? It's a new station. I've got this song. I'm just going to send it to them, or ask if I can send it to them. And would they consider playing it, because I'm a local gal.
Right. Yeah.
And I really, truly thought I would never hear anything. I just thought, what have I, my motto is, besides I'm getting started, is what have I got to lose?
Well, that's true, right? What's the worst they can say? No.
Anybody, I'll ask. I'll throw it out there, see what happens. And lo and behold, the gal got a hold of me and said, "Sure, we'd love to have you come in, and play the song, and we'll do an interview, and you come in and do a couple of songs." Now, this was just prior to the pandemic, so and then it kind of got me excited about the possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I had asked her, I said, if I recorded other songs, would you play them, or would you, she goes, absolutely. So that really was the impetus to start over again. Not, of course, not having any clue this pandemic was going to happen, but that's really what started it. And then my husband found some amazing musicians down in Nashville. And it's just been an ongoing process, and I've just been amazed at how it's all going, and I'm getting my music out to the world, and it's been quite the journey. I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I didn't realize you had started so close to the pandemic. So what has that been like?
I actually don't play a whole lot live. Even prior, I hadn't played for quite a few years. I used to play in a couple of restaurants, just me and my guitar. But otherwise, I haven't played out live a whole lot. And then, of course, like I said, you said the pandemic hit, and then nobody was able to do a whole lot. And I think but I've met so many other musicians through the internet, and because of the pandemic, people could at least record their music, right? So there was so much writing going on, mm-hmm. so much recording, and it just kind of exploded that way, because obviously when you're a creative person, you can't shut that valve off.
No, you can't. And I know for performers that it was, performers just have to perform. It's in their blood. So it really did, it made people become even more creative, which is kind of one of the things I loved about it. People came up with ways to figure out how to keep going. And I thought that was really cool.
Exactly. And then there's so many live streams out there now, mm-hmm. either on Facebook or Twitch or YouTube. And I did a couple of those. And they were a lot of fun. I realize it's definitely not the same thing as having that live audience, but there's still something about it, because you're getting feedback, right? Because there's a chat, and they can, you can say, oh, so-and-so's watching, hi, how are you? Or can you play this song? Or love what you're doing. It's still, at least it's some sort of an interaction, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'm assuming you spent a lot of time then writing new material, and were you doing some recording as well at that time, or?
Yes. Yeah. So during the winter months, that's when I can get the recording done. Right. So we try to get that organized. And then, because come spring again, but March, April, we're on the road with our real jobs.
Right.
But yeah, I'm always, my guitar comes with me everywhere. So I have that guitar in the RV. So I wrote a whole bunch of new songs this summer, and not necessarily finished songs. I have a lot of, just partially finished or lyrics, or, and I just sing it into my phone. So at least I have a record of it. And, but even previous to that, I've got binders full of, not finished songs always, but just song ideas. And then I always get new ideas. And I don't even know. People say, how do you write a song? I'm like, you know what? Sometimes I don't even know where they come from. To be totally honest.
I watched a documentary, probably about a year ago, on Taylor Swift. And she was
I watched that too.
Yeah, the one where she was working on her next album, and I just, how much of the work was done with her iPhone, and I was just like, I hadn't even thought of of that. But what an amazing tool that has become for musicians. And I've noticed it more and more on like some of the Instagram accounts of musicians that I follow where they're working on new songs or stuff and how much they use their phones. And I just, who knew it would become a songwriting tool?
Exactly. Well, and you know, back in the day, it was a cassette machine.
Right.
Yeah. And I really wish I had all those old cassettes because it would be so interesting. Because like I said, I was trying to write back when, I was in high school. And it was so neat to have those, but I'm sure they got tossed out years ago. Yeah, no, the iPhone is really, and technology in general is just amazing, right?
Yeah.
For that.
You can record a whole album on your Mac. There you go.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, so to be clear, I mean, you started to get really serious about this recently, but you're not in your 20s anymore. Like
No, and as my sister said, you're not even in your 40s anymore.
So a lot of people would look at where they are in life and be like, oh, you know what, my chance has passed me by. What was it that made you say, no, I'm just starting, like here we go, let's get going?
Well, I think it always goes back to that passion.
Mm-hmm.
I've always had this passion, and you don't always know in this journey. When I think back, I tried to get into the School of Music, and that my journey took me a different pathway, twists and turns, and here I am, and it's kind of happening for me, whatever that means, right? I'm not talking about famous because that's probably never going to happen, and that's not. And I know when I see famous people, they don't even seem happy, so that's not even a thing for me. But I'll never stop writing, so I thought, this is something you're passionate about. You're not hurting anybody.
No, not at all.
And if you can bring some joy to people, the response has just been amazing. And then I kind of think of it as if I can encourage other people to take that leap of faith, not be so scared, especially of what other people think. Right. And I've never been kind of that person. I was always kind of a bit of a rebel, I would say, that way. Maybe didn't ever feel like I fit in or conformed. And so that's always maybe kind of kept me, and not to be so scared. And then as well, I've looked to other artists. I idolize, Dolly Parton, Cher, Tanya Tucker. The list goes on. And those girls haven't stopped.
No, not at all.
Right? So I think they've been really role models too for me.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was just watching Dolly Parton on something. She was on the other day, and I was just like, she just keeps going. She's like the Energizer Bunny. Like, my goodness.
She is. And just, different ways to, I don't know, reinvent is the word. That's maybe not, because Dolly's Dolly.
I think of Madonna when I think of reinvention, but Dolly Parton just seems to be Dolly Parton. Like,
exactly. But what's the word I'm looking for? Current. She always stays current.
Yeah.
Because you see her on Instagram, right?
And she doesn't take it seriously. Like, I shouldn't say that. I think she takes what she does very seriously, but she doesn't take herself seriously. She's always one to have a laugh at herself or whatever's going on around her, and I don't know, she just comes across as very real. And
that's what people love about her.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you are, I can't think of the word, it's escaped me, true to yourself, that's not,
you could say authentic, I guess, although I think we use that word
authentic, a lot. Yeah, that's the word. I think when you are authentic, and I really try to be, because that's all I'm like I said, I'm a small town girl that never has left me. I think people really do feel that, and it comes through, and it seems to come through in your music and just everything you do. And because I'm amazed at the support I'm getting, and I don't want to just say from females, but I get a lot of cheering on, and especially from the older gals, and I'm like, and I want to cheer them on. I want to say, yeah, I'm doing it, but you guys can do this, like whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Think you would like to give it a try. Like, we're only on this earth for such a short time. I think that's the other thing. As you age, you're like, okay, I only have so much time, so why not now?
Yeah, I think that's something that definitely comes as you start to get into your 40s and you realize that you've probably got more years behind you than you have ahead of you, and that's a very uh
Sobering.
powerful, it's a very sobering thought. Yes, absolutely. And you just realize all of a sudden, like, you know what, a lot of this stuff that I'm worrying about, it doesn't matter.
That's right. And I also think with the age comes confidence.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about, what made you want to do this? And I'm like, well, okay, I've done this, a wife, a mother. I've owned many, different businesses. I've been a florist. I'm also a visual artist. I've been a house cleaner. I mean, you name it. I just feel like I could walk into any business now and I got this. I could, I'm much more confident than I was
Yeah.
when I was in my 20s. But so I think sometimes if you can look back at what have you accomplished and put that into forward thinking. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, I've done this. What lies ahead? I mean, yeah, I can tackle this. I can take this on, you
Yeah.
know.
Did you have any doubts?
I did. Like I said, when I was sending that song, I thought I'll probably never hear back. I don't really know why I think I should be doing this. I did. I mean, I always try to be positive, but I did have doubts. And I thought, and at my age, I mean, and it went through my head. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Right.
But then I just kind of thought, no, I mean, I'll never quit writing music. I'll never stop loving music. And let's just see what happens. It's just kind of a, and I can't believe what has happened. It's just been such a fun adventure.
Did you hit any roadblocks along the way? Like, have you come up against any of them? And the ones, if you have, do you think any of them would have been in the way if you'd been younger? Like, do you think your age has opened doors that might not have been open to you when you were younger? Or, like, how has that all been for you?
I think, and going back to technology, I think because there's so many new like internet radio stations
Mm-hmm.
that have opened up, I've got, like I said, I'm being played all over the world. However, it is very difficult to get mainstream
Yeah.
radio airplay. And so if there was any type of a roadblock, I would say it's probably that. And part of me has to be understanding in that because I'm not 20 or 30 on the road trying to make a living at this.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to be understanding that the DJs aren't going to look at me the same as, somebody in their 20s or 30s that, that they're out touring and they're out to make some money and to survive. So, but I still, like I said, there's so many doors have opened and there's some that kind of stay closed and I try not to focus on them, but sometimes I still want to knock on them. Like, I'm here, I'm new, and but so I guess that's been frustrating. To try to get on maybe some of the more popular, even Canadian radio stations, But like I said, I don't want to get on a negative train because I'm sure and I don't know if it's age for sure. It's just my guess, right?
I hate to say this, but I think your instinct is probably a little bit right
Yeah,
there.
yeah, exactly.
Just as somebody who's coming up on 50. One of the things, and I mentioned this to you in the questions I sent you before the interview, but I remember hearing a lot in my 20s and 30s how women over the age of 40 often feel like they're invisible, and I didn't really get that until I hit my mid 40s. There definitely is something that happens in there, and I don't quite know why it is or what it is, but I do think that we're kind of coming into an era where I think women of Gen X and I think absolutely millennials are not going to be so quiet about getting older. Like, I feel like we're not willing to become invisible, and I'm sort of hoping that is something that we kind of push back on going forward.
Exactly. And I think, yeah, and I think that's why if we could be role models,
Mm-hmm.
right, for that generation, the younger generation, and say, okay, so when you hit 40, it doesn't mean everything has to stop. But I mean, if you just look at the entertainment industry as a whole, right, whether it's actors or
Yeah.
or I mean, that's yeah, it's the advertising, it's youth, and it's but I think we have to take that back. I mean, okay, you've got that, but what about all the experiences? And I think too, when I was talking about getting airplay, because I don't write about what the 20-year-olds are writing about, right? So my experiences are different at this age. So
Mm-hmm.
I write about different things.
Yeah.
So that could also be, fundamentally a big part of it, right? Because we see the world, I think, a little differently because we have that experience, right?
We do, absolutely. And it's funny, sometimes when I talk about all the things I've done, I sort of hear myself talking and I think, oh my gosh, you sound like you have not been able to settle in on any one thing. And then I have to remind myself, you've been working for over 30 years.
Right,
That's a
right.
long time. If I had been doing the same thing for 30 years, that wouldn't say much about my growth as a human being, right? So I think we do have this wealth of experience. And I think we're getting into this period where you mentioned technology. We have tools like technology, we have social media, we have channels to be able to, if there are going to be gatekeepers out there, we have the ability now to go around those gatekeepers and get ourselves out there. And you see this sometimes, you'll read an interview with like a Hollywood actress or something who is in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they talk about how all the good roles, the juicy roles, kind of dry up when they hit that age. They become the mom or the grandma. And then you hear them talking about like they're in this position now where they have some power to produce their own productions, and there's so many streaming platforms and the internet and so many places where they can get those productions out there and they can create their own roles.
Exactly. And I'm that's exciting, right?
Yeah, it's
I
so
think that's
exciting.
wonderful because yeah, we still have something to say. I mean, in
Yeah,
fact, we have, like you
we
said,
have
more
more to say.
because we've done more.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting that the relaunch of Sex and the City just hit earlier this week. We won't get in. By the time this airs, people will have had time to watch it, but there's some big spoilers in it. But I thought it was really interesting that there is this whole group of women, at least in my age group, that are very hungry for this show to come out. They want to see where these women are now.
Right, right.
So I think there's definitely there's a place for us, and it doesn't have to be in the shadows right now.
No, no, that's right. That's really funny that you said that because I'm working on a song right now and it's called Damn the Shadows.
Mm, yes. I love that title.
So do I. Now I have to write the actual song. But yeah, sometimes the titles come to me and then I go, oh crap, now I gotta write a song to go with the title.
That's a great title. Yeah, I hope you come up with a great song to go with it.
I will keep you posted.
Yes, please do. Um, yeah, is there something freeing about pursuing this as somebody who is older? Like you mentioned earlier that you're kind of at a point where you know what, you don't care. You don't care what people think as much, or does that make this maybe easier than if you had done this when you were younger?
I think so. And I think as we go through life, like when I was growing up and then I was actually pursuing my dreams, I was performing, and
Mm-hmm.
I guess in my young brain, I really wanted to be famous.
Mm.
And I thought maybe it would happen. And it didn't happen, but it probably for good reasons, because I think getting fame at a young age can be very detrimental. And so I don't think it was supposed to probably happen.
Right.
I think, again, when we're young, we think we're going to follow this certain timeline, and it doesn't happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, with the twists and the turns, and then now I'm in my 50s, and I'm coming back to the music and being more serious about it. I'm still having fun, but I just don't think you can always know what's ahead of you, and I think you have to be open to that.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes when you're older, you're more willing to knock on those doors than maybe you would have been when you were younger, just because you know that. I think one of the things that I have learned over the last 30 years is that no isn't, if somebody says no to you, it's not that scary. Like after you've been through it a few times, it's kind of like, okay, well, I'll just try again. And you hear no a lot, no matter what career you go into, you hear no a lot. And it doesn't mean, there's that saying, it just means no, not right now. It doesn't mean no forever.
Yeah, that's a good point. And not to take it as, and being creative is tough because we do take things personally.
Yes.
That's been, and my husband will remind me of that. Like, don't take stuff so personally. I mean, if that DJ doesn't want to play your music, don't take it so personally.
Yeah.
Just, keep trying. So yeah,
that was a big lesson for me when I actually was working as an editor in my last business, and I had to say no to so many amazing people. And that was when I realized, you know what, these people are great. And I'm not saying no to them because they're terrible. I'm saying no to them because it's just not the right fit right now, or it doesn't fit into what the projects we're working on this month or this year. And those people still stay in the back of my mind. Like I'm always thinking about, well, where could I potentially do something with them down the road? And that's what made me realize, like, you know what? All those times I heard no, it was probably because I just didn't fit in where they needed right now. And it was a big eye opener for me. It really taught me to take no a lot less personally.
Exactly. No, and that's a very interesting point. But that's definitely for me an ongoing thing, because I've always been a people pleaser, right? And I just want to please people. And so when people say, no, you can't do that, or but I think it makes you a little stubborn too, which is good. You don't just roll over, right? Yes. It's like, okay, well, that was no now, like you said, but maybe I'll try again later, or...
Absolutely. Lisa Congdon, who is a very well-known illustrator based out of, I think she's in Portland now, in Oregon. She wrote a book recently called A Glorious Freedom, and I fell in love with this book when I read it. And it was actually the inspiration for this podcast. And in the book, she interviews women all over the world who didn't find their true calling or their true passion until after the age of 40. Mm-hmm. And she also profiled some women further back in history who were in the same boat. And I love the title because there truly is something about hitting 40 that is freeing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I loved about the book is all these women had extraordinarily long lives where they kept working well into their 80s and 90s. And I started to wonder if maybe there was a connection point there. Like, these women have found what they love, and it drives them to get up in the morning. Like, and I just wondered if that's something that you have felt like it's almost like a new lease on life, or that there's like a freedom that has suddenly come because you're at this stage in your life where you, I'm assuming at this point your kids are probably adults.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
So you're still a mom, of course, but you don't have to be part of the day-to-day of their lives as much as you did when they were younger. And so is there something here that is just, you feel like you've been given this freedom, or that you've found this new passion and it's what drives you? Like, how are you feeling there?
It really does. I mean, I am excited every morning to get up. I've been on so many interviews and podcasts, and, so between that and then, figuring out what's the next song that we want to record. We were trying to do our own videos. We did Small Town Prayer was one of my songs. And when we were out working in Saskatchewan, we'd never done a video before, but my husband is so techie. He loves all that stuff. He's so good at it. And then he does mixes the music. And so we were out there, and we, found this farmer, and we filmed our video out there. And then he came and put it all together. I mean, so we're always doing something. It's a little more juggling because we're also still working,
right?
But yeah, I am excited every day. I have stuff on my calendar month to month to month, and it's like, yeah, I am really excited. And it's nothing to do with financial, because that's maybe someday, but right now it's just like a very expensive hobby. But you know what? I'm okay with that too. because I've always kind of, and I don't know if you felt like this about, you have to make money.
Yeah, you do.
And I think,
we have bills to pay.
Yeah. And even as, as a young mom, I wasn't working, so I would babysit. I always felt like I have to contribute,
Mm-hmm.
And maybe, hopefully someday this will contribute, balance the books out. But at the same time, I think I know I have put too much emphasis on the monetary.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to, because I feel joy. I feel, excitement, and you can't put a price on those things.
No,
So
you can't.
so I have to kind of, quit worrying about, even my husband said, quit worrying about the money part. Like, just enjoy what you're doing. And who knows, maybe that will come someday. I mean, because there's so many possibilities, right?
I mean, if you're a songwriter, there's always the opportunity for other people to record your songs, right?
And when you talk about a dream come true, that would be a dream come true for me, or possibly to have, a snippet of your song in a movie. I mean, the possibilities really are quite endless. And I feel like there isn't enough hours in the day.
So do I.
Yeah. And I'm also a visual artist, and I didn't even get a chance to do that this summer.
What kind of visual art do you do?
I do, so I work in acrylics, watercolor, colored pencil, and I do pet portraits, landscapes, florals, name it, abstracts, because I just love to learn. So I love learning new techniques, but I took all my art supplies to the RV this summer, and I never got one thing out because I was so busy with the music. Which is wonderful, right?
Yeah.
But I have an art studio. I mean, I have music studio. So for me, I think that's the tough part about being creative. I probably could structure my time better. That's something I really fight with.
I'm laughing because I completely understand.
And I sometimes get my husband to help me because he's very organized. I mean, he's also very creative, but he can organize. So I sometimes need help with that part of my life.
Yeah, it's hard, especially when you have so many things that you love to do. And I think that's a very common struggle for creatives. I think it's very rare that there's any of us out there who are fixated on one creative stream. I think all of us tend to have multiple things that we love to do and wish we could spend more time on. But finding that time is always a challenge.
Yeah, and sometimes I think, I'll look back and I'll think, why wasn't I ever the secretary or the, the same job for, like you said, 30 years. But I truly don't think I would have been happy.
No, I found that this isn't something I would ever have spotted when I was 20 for very obvious reasons. But when I look back, I sort of found that I have like a 7-year cycle. That's about how long I can do something for. And then I kind of need to move on or have some kind of big change or shift that happens. Right. And I think that just seems to be how I'm wired. But I don't think I could have done the same thing for my whole career.
No, I don't think we were meant to do that, right?
No.
I think we have to be okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. What was it like filming a video? I'm just curious because I'm always curious about music videos because there is an acting component that goes into those, which is, I don't know if my brain would be able to do both those things. I'm always curious how they're filmed.
Well, like I said, it was just a fun project for us to do. We drove around to different farms because in my song, it's called Small Town Prayer, and it talks about a barn and the tractor, and it's very rural kind of song, being thankful for where I grew up. And so we went out to kind of look at different locations, and we came across this beautiful red barn, but we didn't want to be on their property, because nowadays you don't do that. You don't just go and trespass. So anyway, we seen this chap coming down the road, the dirt road, on a tractor, and we said, I wonder if that's the owner of this land. And sure enough, it was. And we told him what we were doing, and he says, oh, well, if you like this barn, you'll love my barn over there. And he let us go on property and film on his, they had this beautiful, probably early 1900s red barn, and it had the brick at the bottom, like they could drive into it.
Yeah.
And yeah, we took our speaker and Brad just put the song on, and we just did different shots, different angles. And we did it all with an iPhone. There you go again.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, the gimbal. So he could follow me along. And it was so much fun, and I think it came out really, really well. And I'm no actress, but I know I knew when I looked at other music videos, I thought, okay, well, don't move your arms too much. Don't make it look too like I'm flailing my arms, which you can't see.
Yes.
Like over the top, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a lot of fun, and check it out and see what you think. But
is it available on like YouTube or somewhere where we can go see it? Awesome.
Yeah, I have the YouTube channel. So, okay. And then the other song that I had to actually hire a gal to do. I had a song called "Pour Me Again," and we hired that out. Just again, it's timing for us, right? Mm-hmm. So that's the tough part, because we'd love to do. I have a song called "Stayed a While." We'd like to do that one. I wanted to do one for my Christmas song, but we're running out of time. Like I said, not enough hours in the day.
Yeah, and I mean, you basically are a two-person shop. It's you and your husband, so yes. You don't have an entourage with you at this point.
No, exactly. I mean, it'd be fun, if you could, win a lottery and have all this stuff. But I don't know if you'd be any happier. I mean, we're just having fun. I mean, and we're not taking ourselves too seriously. And I think that's kind of the fun part about it. But to get the response that I'm getting has just been so wonderful. Like, I can't believe how many people want to see you succeed.
Yes, and I think that's something we tend to forget too, is that there's always a cheerleading section behind us. There's people who want to see us do well. I think that's very normal. We just tend to get too wrapped up in our own heads, really.
I think so too. Yeah, and I think as well that's another age thing, because we don't get so caught up in drama anymore.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When we were in our 20s, every little thing was like, oh my God. Now it's like, oh, whatever. Like, so I think that really changes our thought process as well.
Oh, that's funny. I used to be a bit of a Real Housewives of Orange County junkie way back when it first started. Oh, and I loved it. And now whenever I turn one of those shows on, I'm just like, oh my goodness, you ladies are so loud. Like, there's just so much, you're all so angry. You're making, and it all just seems ridiculous now, but I loved it.
Rich and you're so unhappy.
Yes. And that's not to say that I have a problem with women being loud, but when you're being loud and it's just fighting, like, I'm too old for that now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't think the too old thing should be a negative anymore.
No.
We've lived through a lot of stuff. There's just stuff we don't want to have to deal with anymore. I mean, this life is precious, right?
Exactly. I just was saying to somebody the other day, I just want to focus the last half of my life on being around people who make me happy, who I make them happy, who we can laugh with and have a good time, and who love me and who I love them. That's what I want.
Yeah, and I mean, let's face it, this last 2 years has really put us all in a different mindset.
Absolutely.
And you really appreciate your friends and your family, and it's so interesting to think it expands beyond that, right? Like, that's what I'm finding with having, putting myself out there. To see people from Ireland or Scotland or Australia reach out to me and say, oh, I love your music, or, I'll post something and I've got, 300 engagements, and not to get caught up in that part of it, but just like, wow.
Well, no, I mean, there's something to be said for that. If you had really gone all in with this 30 years ago, back at, it's hard to believe the 90s were 30 years ago, but anyway, now I sound old. But no, 30 years ago, you you could have been doing what you're doing now, but to have people in those countries on the other side of the world find you would have been a much harder thing to accomplish.
Absolutely.
And that's what I mean. Technology and social media has given us this ability to connect with people we never would have been able to connect with a few decades ago. So
yeah, and I've met so many, because I'm on Spotify and now I've joined playlists, so I'm on playlist groups, and I keep saying I've met people, of course, just through the internet, but you almost do. You feel like some of these people, and even with one of the chaps that I met, a fellow Canadian singer-songwriter, we did some writing together, and I'd never done that before, but through Zoom, right?
Yeah.
Then there we are writing songs together. And that's been happening a lot in my group of folks. And it's been really a lot of fun.
You just mentioned that, or we mentioned at the beginning that you had just come back from touring. What was that like to be able to get back out there? That must have been pretty cool.
Well, that's the thing. When I said we were on the road working, it was with our real jobs.
Oh, okay.
So I haven't played out in a very long time. So
is that something you're looking forward to?
I would like to, especially if we, kind of slowly ease into retirement.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm thinking about that, and not on a big scale. I mean, we have dreams. I mean, if we won the lottery, it would be so fun to just hire a bunch of musicians to go on the road. But in your 50s, do you want to do that?
Well, that's true. I mean, I spent the early part of my career traveling a lot for work, and I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, I'm happy to stay home.
Yeah, but again, with technology, I can put on live streams.
Yeah,
will put me on the big screen, and it could be like when I do a live stream, I get dressed up. I want it to feel like they're at a concert.
Right.
And so I think there's so much more I could do with that if I didn't get the chance to go out and play. But I know there is something about a live audience. I mean, there's nothing like it, right?
Yeah.
But even just to go and play coffee shops around town, and I still would like to get a little more well known, just even in Alberta, in my hometown, and even the care homes and stuff like that, just to share the music.
Yeah, they're always looking for people to come in and play.
Yeah, and I mean, the power of music, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, that's kind of I think the sad part about our world. Creatives aren't taken that seriously, and yet when you see the joy it can bring, like I see it through. I sold one of my paintings just out of the blue here. So whether it's art or music, I mean, it brings such joy, but there doesn't seem to be as much focus on it. It's like fluffy. It's not that important. And that's kind of sad. I don't know how we change that.
I really thought the pandemic would change that, because I think in the early days, I mean, think back to the early days of the pandemic. It's quite different than it was now. And, there were a lot of things memes and stuff on the internet saying, like, all those creatives and artists and things that you felt like they don't have real jobs. How are you feeling about that now that you're sitting at home binging Netflix, desperate for something new to look at or listen to, or, and that's the creatives that are putting that out there. All that content you consumed in those early days of the pandemic when you were locked down.
Mm-hmm. That's very true. That's very true.
That's what creatives did for you. They got you through it.
That's right. And I think it was that way back in the war times, right? I mean, music was very
huge,
important.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, historically, I think you can look back at different times and realize how important music was, or art, or just being creative.
All of it. Even in the courts through Europe and stuff in the 15, 16, 1700s, they had their court musicians and the people who were there to entertain.
That's right.
That was a job. And you look at the Renaissance and you have people who were very wealthy, who were the patrons of incredible artists like Michelangelo and Da Vinci and things like that. They had their patrons who made it possible for them to create this incredible work.
And when you're talking about patrons, I mean, of course, there is a thing called Patreon now,
Yes, yeah.
right? Maybe once I become a starving musician, maybe I'll look into that. But I think too, I kind of struggle with still that part of people, are cheering me on. Like, would people, want to pay for this or pay for that? Like, I still struggle with that part of it.
And that's just
You know what I
the
mean?
artistic creative mindset. We sort of, I don't know where this comes from, and I am just as guilty of it, but we all have it in the back of our heads that it's quite acceptable if we starve.
I know.
and it's silly, but and this is where when you hear somebody saying, oh, they sold out, or they're not suffering for their art, it can't be that good. But when you look back to things like the Renaissance, they were not starving. They had people who were paying them to produce art, and it's quite acceptable.
Exactly. And with music, I mean, as wonderful as technology has been, in some ways it has decimated the music industry. Right?
It's a very different industry than it was 30 years ago.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no probably, unless you're at the top, right? Top percent, unless you're the Taylors and the Drakes and the Dollys and but mind you, they've been at it for a very long time. But that's kind of the, and the funny thing is, they say with technology, anybody can, put a song on out to the world. That's the good and the bad.
Yes.
There's different levels of talent and stuff like that, but it is still pretty cool. I mean, I'm still, I can say, to Google, like, play Sharon Marie White, and then my song comes up, and I'm like, that is so cool.
It is cool. You can do the same with the podcast. I'm like, that is so cool.
Our kids were over helping me decorate the Christmas tree, and I have got my Christmas song playing in the background, and I said to my son, how many people can say while they're decorating their tree, they're listening to their own Christmas song?
Yeah, no, it's very cool. So what is next for you? Because you've been trying so many different things, and you're doing a lot of cool stuff. What's next? What's coming down the pipe?
I think just to keep recording. I've got tons of songs I need to record or that I'm currently working on. So just recording, getting them out to the world. I would like to do more YouTube videos, live streams, just reach more people. And with that as well, maybe, with the art, if I have time, because I do find the art takes me to a different place than the music. It's very calming.
Yeah.
Meditative, and so I still need that in my life as well.
Yeah.
And then I even think ahead to possible, when we retire, I used to also teach guitar lessons. It's still something that I really want to do. I want to keep inspiring either the young folks coming up or any age group. Just to, if you've always wanted to learn the guitar, I mean, I'd love to teach and just keep inspiring people and just say, quit saying you can't do something.
My parents both, my mom came from, both my parents came from pretty musical families, but my mom's was very musical. She grew up playing the piano and everything. And then when she was in her, I want to say her late 30s, she was like, I want to learn the guitar. So and my brother was taking guitar lessons at the time. So she just asked his teacher, like, could I come take guitar lessons? And my dad picked up his first guitar when he was in his 40s. So,
it's great. Yeah. And it is a difficult instrument, but again, and I think, like, we have three grown men, and they're all very musical, but they don't have the same passion for it, but that's okay. And the great thing about music, Melissa, is you can pick, like you just said, you can pick it up at any age.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're into sports, I mean, I used to be a sports nut too. I played everything, but you're not going to start playing hockey at 50, but you can pick up a guitar or learn the piano at 50.
Absolutely. You can. And once you have the skill set, it stays with you for life. You get a little rusty. You got to, I haven't sat down to play the piano in a few years, but I could still go downstairs and lift up the lid and pick out a tune. I wouldn't be playing at the level I played when I was, 16, 17, but,
right.
But I could still sit down and after get a few cracks and pops out of my fingers, I could get going. So you've got lots going on. And before we wrap up here, you did mention that if people sign up for your newsletter, you have a free single that they can download called Shine.
Yes.
So that's and so where can they go to sign up for your newsletter?
So it's SharonMarieWhite.com.
Excellent. Very easy to remember. Yes. And we have a whole ton of links where people can find you on the internet. I have listened to you on Spotify. I know you have a YouTube channel. You're on Instagram. And we will put links to all of those in the show notes. But if there's one place where people can connect to you that you're more active than anywhere else, where can they find you?
That probably would be Facebook.
Oh, okay.
And I have a couple of different pages. I have Sharon Marie White Eclectic Soul Music. It's a group page, and then I have just my Sharon Marie White music page. But definitely, if anybody wants to reach out to me and just have a chat, I mean, I'm just like, people want to join me on this journey. I would just be, so pleased and happy. And yeah, I'm very humbled by everything that's going on and having so much fun.
Yeah, well, I can tell. You can just tell in your voice that you're having a great time. So that's incredible. And thank you so much for being here today. This was such a fun chat. And I think this is one that our audience is going to really appreciate. We definitely have what I would consider a very Gen X audience. So I think this is something that what we've been talking about today really kind of resonates with a lot of us who are probably listening. And I really wish you tons of success because it sounds like you're having a fantastic time. So
yeah, well, thanks so much for having me. And just to the listeners, just go for it. Don't be scared and shy. It's life is short. So
it is.
Go for it.
It is. If the last 2 years have taught us anything, it's that life is short. So
absolutely,
get out there and do what you love.
Exactly.
So that is it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for listening, and I will be back next week with another brand new episode. We'll talk to you all then. Thank you so much for joining us for the And She Looked Up Creative Hour. If you're looking for links or resources mentioned in this episode, you can find detailed show notes on our website at andshелookedup.com. While you're there, be sure to sign up for our newsletter for more business tips, profiles of inspiring Canadian creative women, and so much more. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to the show via your podcast app of choice so you never miss an episode. We always love to hear from you, so we'd love it if you'd leave us a review through iTunes or Apple Podcasts. Drop us a note via our website at andshелookedup.com or come say hi on Instagram at andshелookedup. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.